Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I thought I'd ask the very important question: is now a good time to start playing Marvel Future Fight? And especially given what I discussed in yesterday's video, which I recommend you watch if you haven't, I think it's a really important question to answer and to analyze now more than ever, and especially with recent changes we've seen to the game with the 3rd year anniversary happening in the end of April or at the beginning of May. And I actually left the game up on this page prior to loading the rest of the screen because this is a really good example of the types of things that we've gotten used to in the past few months in the game. Long login events that are amazing and really rewarding for new players. And that really encapsulates the short version of the answer to the question, which is basically, in my opinion, yes. If you are a new player, now is a great time to jump into this game. You're going to get a lot of stuff for free, and you're going to feel a pretty rapid progress in terms of building your first few characters and getting through what appears to be quite difficult gameplay for now anyways. And my answer is more nuanced, and I'll get into the issue of, you know, the kind of challenges that the game has and things, of course, that can be improved because the game is not perfect. But things like this are a lot more common now, and they're a big part of the reason why I think if you are looking for a new game, especially if you're a fan of Marvel, now is the best time to start playing a game like this. And it's a great game that's going to reward you with tons of check-in events, which are generally designed around new players. Now, there are ways where you can min-max these rewards, especially when it comes to specific characters that you are going to get, but there is especially things that they've built in place where even if you've started after these events have started, maybe you're a week behind or 2 weeks behind, there's a lot of wiggle room. So this 8-week reward event runs for that full time, but it still has at the bottom here, you can't see because my video is covering it, there's 66 days until the event ends. So the 66 days actually covers more time. Even now, if you started, you'd be able to pick up, even 10 days from now, all of the rewards, even though you didn't start when the event started. And that's just one of the small ways that they're really rewarding new players and encouraging them to pick up the game even casually. Now, as far as what I would recommend you do if you are going to pick up the game, there are a couple of differences that I do want to make apparent to you. Now, I think that while the game is very rewarding for new players, I think the way that you approach playing the game is definitely going to influence how long you can play the game for and the types of gameplay you're going to be kind of rewarded with. And I think Marvel Future Fight is positioned really well as a game that is rewards players who are patient, rewards players who are not necessarily low spenders or no spenders, but just players that like to take their time. One of the best things about Marvel Future Fight, and this is kind of a hallmark of the better mobile games, is that the majority of the content in-game is accessible by all players, or by the majority of players. Even if you don't spend a single penny on this game, you can access all of the content on this tab. You can access all of the content on this tab. Of course, you won't be able to defeat all of the content to the highest difficulty right away, but with time, you'll be able to do most, if not all of the content at a high level. Essentially, the only game mode that you won't be able to compete in as a low spending or zero spending player is the Alliance Tournament. And the Alliance Tournament, frankly, is not even that interesting because you don't even get to play. It's more of a chess match with pieces that attack each other kind of by the AI's control. It's not under your control. But every other game mode besides that is accessible by pretty much anyone. And while I do stress the fact that the game rewards players who are patient, and the epic quests are a really good example of taking, you know, time, and it's going to sound silly, but taking months of time just casually playing a mobile game will reward you in the end with very powerful characters that you can then take into the rest of the game modes that you can still do. There's a pretty low skill cap on the game in order to just do things. Now, of course, if you want to be the best, if you want to have the fastest times to clear certain content, if you want to have the highest DPS characters, that, of course, is going to take some amount of spending in addition to a lot of knowledge of the game. But if you just want to have fun, if you want to collect the majority of characters that are available in the game as part of your Marvel kind of roster, you can do so with just time. Now, of course, the amount of time that you want to spend is going to impact whether you spend or not, but it is available. And while there are some characters that you will have to pay for outright if you want to collect them, I think that's where the game really rewards fans versus collectors. If you are a collector, I would say that you should kind of be careful when you play or when you start playing this game, because it's very easy to get sucked in as a collector to want to have everything. And while the number of characters that you have to just outright pay for is low compared to the overall number of characters, the list is getting bigger. And I think as the game gets older, the developers are going to rely on more super popular characters requiring some sort of payment in order to unlock or in order to maximize their value. And that's just where the developer kind of makes back the money that they invest in paying Marvel for the intellectual property, and then also to continue developing the servers and developing the art and paying the devs to make the game. So I think for the really mega collectors who need to have every last thing, this game will satisfy that need for a price, but you definitely will have to pony up if you want them all. Now, if you just want a very specific character that you're a huge fan of, let's say you're a really big fan of, we just saw Nadia Van Dyne, or you're a really big fan of Gwenpool, or you're a really big fan of Dormammu, those specific characters you can get through specific means while spending a small amount of money and some time, or a little bit amount of money and more time. But it really just comes down to that, and that I think is a great part of what makes this game special. If you don't want to spend time, spend money. If you want to spend time, you save money. You don't have to spend money. Additionally, I think that a lot of the in-app purchases, a lot of the microtransactions in this game, and the macro transactions are good in terms of the fact that you're getting a very set item for your money. You're not really getting a mystery box in terms of your purchases. There are some mystery boxes in the game on these two tabs, and I would recommend staying away from them if you don't want to test your luck. But other than that, there are the vast majority of items in this game that you will get to enhance characters or to just speed up your character acquisition. It's very plain. It's you're paying X amount of dollars and you're getting X Y amount of items in return, and you can almost tangibly calculate what the value is for you in terms of time. It would take you, let's say, a month of playing a specific dungeon, a dimension rift, to get one mythical card. So if you really wanted that mythical card, that comic card just now, you can kind of do the math on the time it would take versus you just spending that money up front through the store. I think another thing that this game does really well, if we're going to be discussing spending money, is the VIP system. Now, the VIP system does have a pretty insane threshold in terms of the highest level, VIP 20. We're talking probably tens of thousands of dollars US spent, but it is a rewarding system for those players that want to spend. And believe it or not, there are definitely games out there that ask as much, if not more, money out of their top players and don't reward them with a VIP system. So for those of you that do spend a lot on mobile games and get a lot of enjoyment out of being a top player and just being able to crush everyone else, you're rewarded with an additional set number of bonuses, which actually become quite valuable even at low stages. This is one of the few games that rewards you quite generously for just spending a couple of dollars that you would have spent on a coffee into the game just a few times. And you can see that with VIP bonuses surrounding the additional timers on chests and energy recharges, and the XP that you get for using clear tickets, which saves you a ton of time that you wouldn't have to grind out regular missions just by auto-playing and burning the energy or burning the battery on your phone, but also in the co-op rewards, where you can get an additional co-op slot or two to unlock lots of other kind of grinding resources that you can then use to build up your characters even faster. So for those reasons, I do think that the game is both positioned well for new players who don't want to spend and just want to be patient, and new players who do want to spend and do want to feel as though they're getting a lot of value for their investment. I think there's both tracks that are successful. Now, I haven't really said anything negative or kind of critical about the game, and I think the critical aspect of the game happens once you've been playing for a certain number of months or years in my case. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning of the video that if you haven't seen yesterday's video, it would be a good time, because they kind of make sense and they kind of go hand in hand. After playing the game, whether you don't spend for 2 years or you spend aggressively for a year, you will reach a plateau. The game doesn't have a very high skill cap, as I mentioned, for regular content, and outside of a few specific types of content that is very challenging when you go into very high levels of certain boss battles, or if you want to challenge yourself by trying to complete certain content with a time limit, pretty much everything else you can do quite casually once you build up specific characters without much challenge to you as a player in terms of skill, in terms of kind of hand-eye coordination, timing, and things like that. And so because of that, if you're looking for a game that's going to really challenge your skill set, if you're looking for a game that's really going to push the kind of difficulty on you, this is where a game like this does fall short, because it is more centered around collecting characters, building them up, and just having them, rather than pushing their individual limits or collective limits in kind of a group stage mode where you use a majority of Marvel characters. Because that is not the focus of the game, I think that more hardcore gamers and gamers who are used to a much more challenging environment will feel underwhelmed, and they will feel maybe as though after the amount of time spent or the amount of money spent, or both, that they have a collection that they can look at and that's nice, but that ultimately doesn't really get used all that often. And I think it would probably be a good example of comparing a collector that has a bunch of toys still in their wrappers, and they never use them, and they never take them out, and they never play with them. That is more what it feels like to have all of the characters in the game, rather than, you know, you've built up these characters and you're proud of what they can accomplish. There are a few characters that do have that niche, and there definitely are situations where if you're a very dedicated player, you can invest a lot into an underdeveloped character, a character that just doesn't do well in most game modes because they weren't designed for those game modes. Let's say She-Hulk, for example, and you can build them to the point where they can kind of exceed expectations, but there's always going to be a glass ceiling on that, and there's always going to be that feeling that you could just be doing it much easier and much quicker with a better character, even though they may not be your favorite character, or you can just continue a very casual approach to the game. So I wanted to cover this for you guys because I knew a lot of new players, and I know still a lot of new players are coming in, definitely because of Deadpool, but also because of the Infinity War update and how much of a highlight that placed on some of the classic beloved characters in the Marvel Universe like Captain America, Thor, etc. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments of my assessment of the game in terms of whether it's a good time to start as a new player or not. If you have any other tips or general kind of comments that you'd like to make about this topic and answering the question in a little bit more detail, if I've missed anything out, let me know down below in the comments. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. Hit the bell if you don't want to miss any of my videos. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.